it's good to have your dream job, but like try to still stay aware of the fact that maybe it doesn't work for reasons that are not in your control. That can be just money or whatever reasons that are. So look for something else. And also remember that you're going to work in your life, if things go well, roughly 40 years. So your first job doesn't need to be your dream job. Maybe it's just a step towards the next step. So if you find something that is maybe not perfect yet, just go for it. And then if you don't like it after 1 year, then you have some more experience and then you can use that to move to the next step.
Welcome to this new episode of Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. Today, I have the great pleasure of having with me Isabelle Kohler. Isabelle is assistant professor at VU Amsterdam. She's also founder and CEO of Next Minds, a certified coach, and she is also an active writer. She's passionate about helping early career researchers navigate academia, from increasing their well-being during their PhD to preparing the next steps of their career. Isabelle, we've known each other on LinkedIn for a long time. I'm super happy that you could share some of your time with me to be here and to let me pick your brain on some subjects for the Papa PhD audience. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me.
So, Isabelle, we were talking before hitting the record button that you're currently quite busy doing workshops, interacting with PhD students, early career researchers. And I just want to, pass you the mic, let's say, and have you please share what is on the mind of people today out there looking for clarity about their career after the PhD, and what are maybe interesting conversations or aha moments you've had in the last few weeks and that might be inspiring for the podcast audience?
Yeah, that's a very broad question, I think.
Yeah, I'm giving you free rein and then we'll go from there.
I see that. No, so what I see mostly is so in the workshop that I give, so it's usually, let's say last year PhD student or second to last year PhD student. And what I see is that that's usually the moment they get very busy with their thesis, with writing manuscript, writing the thesis, panicking whether they're going to make it or not. And then on top of that, they have to also start looking for a job. And actually, even before actively look for a job, they have to understand what they want to do. And there I see like really common trends everywhere in like all the fields that I've now been in contact with. I think the major challenge that they have is that they still don't know exactly what kind of options that they have, which I find a bit frustrating because I think it's really like there are so many options that a PhD student can choose from after their PhD. But still, we are still with this idea that one of the major options is academia, because that's what all PhD students have seen in the last years, because of course they've studied in industry, they've done a PhD in an academic institute or maybe a university medical hospital, but then a medical center, but it's still related to academia. And then they know that there's something else. And very often they are more interested by this something else, which I find really cool. Or like, let's say most of the time, like the large majority. But then the something else is very often, at least in my field, they will say like, oh, maybe, so I'm considering industry. And then in industry, they will say, but actually, I don't know even what I can do in industry. And they kind of, I think, imagine that what they can do is a kind of copy paste of their PhD in terms of research, and then they will do that in industry. But they do not know even what kind of job it is, what kind of role or which departments, what things like that, which means that they don't know how to look for a job because they actually don't know which keywords to use or who to approach even on LinkedIn or whatever when it comes to network, because they don't have this knowledge yet. And I see that it's like I would say it's just lack of knowledge, because that's knowledge that it's not given within university. Even though you have career centers, but usually it's like way too expensive or even like not considered, I would say, by PhD students or supervisors. So then they are like a bit stuck with this moment of like, oh, we need information. They don't have information. And that's also the moment they don't have, I think, the time to look for this information because they are already quite busy with the deadlines that are related to the PhD. So I see that like very often that it's really getting challenging for everyone reaching the end of their PhD, especially when they want to go to do something outside of academia, because I think that requests require more active like really contacting people, like looking for options and everything like that. And that's also why I always now try more and more to advocate to basically give information to PhD students also early in the process, so that even, when you start your PhD, you're young. Like when I was doing my PhD, I had no idea what I wanted to do anyway. And then you start and you have the feeling that what will happen like 5 years later, that's like another life anyway, because you don't care. It's like you just enjoy your own research. But I really want to like see universities like putting a bit more effort to, from the start, tell them like try to already think like which direction you want to go. And also then during, for instance, conferences or moments where you have contact with people outside of academia, whatever it would be, that then you take this moment to just chat with them, to like ask, hey, what's your job, by the way? What are you doing in your daily life? And that would just bring like kind of informal information that I think would be quite relevant at the moment that I have to like start actively looking for a job.
Yeah, definitely. And that makes total sense. It also aligns with what I see. And it's true that before they get that information, they may think that, oh, I can just kind of pick up my bench and then do the same thing in the world outside university. And it's not exactly like that. For some more, for some less. And that leads me to a question. So the students, the researchers you're working with, are they from all domains? Are they in social sciences? Are they in like more life sciences? Do you have and also the follow-up question is, do all of them have the same type of issue, or is it different depending on where they're coming from in terms of domain?
So I'm mostly focused, I would say, life sciences, because that's also where my expertise is and most of my network. So I do have sometimes questions from people, for instance, from social sciences. So that's, I think, a bit different as well in terms of looking for a job. I would say what still is valid is to actually look for information. That should be everyone doing that. But I'm now thinking based on even in life sciences, I think sometimes I see small differences between, for instance, those in the field of chemistry, I would say, who did a lot of applied chemistry. I have the feeling that they feel that they have more openings or options after their PhD because they can apply their skills. Exactly. But I'm not sure that you have like so big differences in the field of life sciences. But then it's also, so I'm thinking about, like you're saying about the field, but I'm also thinking about countries because I'm, of course, like I'm originally from Switzerland. And I think that's also something that may be interesting also for people listening, is I think the approaches is also different depending on the countries. So for instance, in Switzerland, so the PhD is between 3 to 5 years, but you have to graduate before the end of your contract. So you cannot leave your position without having gotten your PhD. So I did almost 5 years, but then when I was finished, I had my PhD and then I continued with a postdoc. But then in the Netherlands, what is different is that the contract is 4 years for most of the project and most of the funding scheme. So it is 4 years, but you can graduate after the 4 years. So what happens is that it's even, I think, very stressful, and I see that. So the large majority of PhD students do not manage to graduate within these 4 years. They do manage to finish experiments, but then they are still busy writing papers and their thesis. So it means, even worse, that they have to finish their PhD while they start with a new job, or finish their PhD while they are at home, unemployed, and looking for a job, which in terms of stress, it's like, that's not like bearable. So I also notice now differences, maybe more between like countries. than between fields. But I haven't talked to enough. That's a good one. I haven't talked to enough PhD students from other fields to see if there are differences in that.
Anyway, it's this mission of helping people figure out their post-PhD is an ongoing project. So, you have time and you just have to have more conversations. Super interesting, this point of the differences between countries, because it's something I had not thought about. I do remember talking with someone who was doing their PhD in Switzerland, and you mentioned contracts, and it feels like there things even the status of a PhD is different. It's more like, how can I say? You're kind of more like and this is the idea I have from an old conversation. So tell me if I'm a little bit off key, but more like an employee of the university. You'd have an actual contract, and that's actually, I remember the person I talked with. There was much less insecurity in her than I've seen in other people. I had to write my PhD when I was unemployed, my thesis when I was unemployed, and defend, etc. And I know the stress that's associated with that. And so if you're listening, this, what we're going to be talking about does change a little bit depending on where you are.
Yeah, you're what you're saying is correct with the employment as well as a PhD student. And even though, so in the Netherlands, they are also employed. In Switzerland, I was employed, but conditions of employment were different. So in terms of pension, in terms of insurance, in terms of salary that you get, it's different. And that will also, I think that also influences your next steps. Because for instance, when I finished my PhD in Switzerland, I did not have rights for unemployment. So then you're a bit like, that's not gonna go well if like I didn't have any savings or anything, because the salary of a PhD student in Switzerland was back then quite low. Now I don't know, but back then it was quite low. So then you don't have any savings. So it also, I think, a good incentive to like start early to look for something, because you don't want to be like unemployed. You're even not unemployed because you don't have rights to unemployment. So you're basically no job, but then no money, nothing. So I think that's also in your example as well, like depending on the country, I think to be prepared is quite good, because what comes after the PhD could be, no job, having to write your thesis and or papers, and then maybe no benefits in terms of social security. So that is quite stressful as well.
Yeah. And I feel it seems to me that in this context of the Netherlands, where the contract is 4 years, but you can finish after, I think naturally, PIs, labs will try to get, more out of the student, and then, push the student to publish more or improve a paper. And then that leads to the situation you mentioned, which is, okay, now, yes, I've done this extra work, but now I'm in this precarious situation, writing a thesis that I still need to turn in, correct, and then defend. And I'm not, and my financial, professional situation is not at all solved.
Well,
so I think it's interesting. Yeah,
it's a good point, and I'm strongly advocating for this to stop, like to really have PhD students like wrapping their PhD within 4 years. And now, so my university has now a policy where they are trying to make PhD students finish within the time frame, because I think you're correct when you say PI wants to, some, and not all of them, but they want to, let's say, get the best out of their PhD students. But at the same time, when you, at the end of the 4 years, so the PhD students, that they will go somewhere, like to start another life with a job and everything. And the chances of them graduating become like lower and lower with the time. We see that because, of course, like maybe they even found a job where they don't need the PhD. And
then they drop it.
Exactly. And the problem is, if they drop it, the university doesn't get the money, because every time that a PhD student graduates, the university gets money. And in turn, what is like budget cuts, issues everywhere in the world, also in the Netherlands, like this is not something you want to have. So as a PI, you have to, I think, find a good balance, let's say, between, okay, you do want to have some results being published, because also PhD students have to publish, but then at the same time, you don't want them to like disappear somewhere in nature without graduating, because that's also not good in terms of money. That's not good for your CV as well as a PI. So, I think it's still better if we all want to have PhD students finishing on time. And even better, like having a job before they promote so that they can start with the job directly after the PhD.
Oh my God, I feel like we just started another episode because this brings me, I have so many reflections about this. But let's pick up on the jobs thing. And then maybe we can have another conversation about this question of, how to ensure that you are the most strategic when you choose your lab, when you choose your project, to guarantee that you finish before your funding finishes, because that changes a lot of things. But one thing, so now going back to what jobs are out there and your preparation to jump into either industry or entrepreneurship or government or public service, but also academia. But one of the things that I agree 200% with you, and I'm being totally unscientific here, is that as early as possible, if universities, departments, research institutions start offering, if not mandatory, very low friction training, training, support, mentorship for career, for graduate students, I agree that's kind of the key thing. Start early as possible. And I would say, as you were talking, I was thinking, one of the key moments that I don't know if it works the same way over there, but here in North America, you have this thing where, or at least in Canada, where you're doing your master's, and if things are going well, you get approached to jump into the PhD fast track. And I think first that may feel enticing, but it's not always the right choice. But I think if you do that, you should accompany it with a piece saying, okay, we're going to push you into the PhD, but we're also going to tell you that you have this percentage of chance of having a tenure track professorship. And if you don't get that, here's what other PhDs are doing that did this program. And I don't know that PhD programs out there are doing this yet. There's still a lot of, so most of the people that I talk with go into a PhD program with this idea of becoming a professor. And then that changes at different steps during the PhD. So I would say it should start at the master level. It's like, okay, you want to do a PhD after your master's, here's what you need to consider. And then lay out the numbers and lay out the map of things you can do to have people choose the PhD cognizant and knowing everything there is to know about it. And I feel that this is kind of what you were saying, but I'd love your reflection on this in terms of the timing of when people should know what's there after the PhD.
Yeah, I think even like to choose for a PhD, I think that should also be explained maybe differently. So I have the feeling that students choosing for a PhD, they don't exactly understand what a PhD means, because very often I think they have the feeling, what I see is that they have done a research project of many months and they did research. That's also what happened for me when I was a master's student. And they're like, oh, that's so cool, research. I want to keep doing research. As always, they say research. I like that. So then you start a PhD and you're like, oh, that's research, but then for 4 years. But actually, that's not exactly only that. So it's like way more than that. And then also what I see is those who start with that. So very often, indeed, they don't know what they're going to do. They just know that they like research. I think that's like the common trend in PhD.
I was like that.
See, like really research is cool. And then at the moment that they think, oh, so if they don't know what is outside of academia, they will think also, oh, academia is great because then I can do research. But then that's also where I'm trying to bring some awareness, I think, is that, for instance, the job I'm doing now, which is 11 years post-PhD, is totally not what I was doing as a PhD student. Like in terms, I'm almost like not doing research anymore. Like my 90% of my time is doing other stuff that I was not expecting that I would do when I was a PhD student. So for me, it turned well because I like what I'm doing and I'm good also at this, for instance, committee stuff or political stuff or whatever. But then I also see that many PhD students who think like, oh, I want to continue, like do a postdoc and then maybe become a PI and everything. They're like, oh, that's cool because I can have my own research and develop my own ideas, which is great. But that's only one aspect of it. And I miss also that a bit because I think even master students that are, so when you're in the lab, you see, of course, the professor or the PI that is like running between meetings and having a coffee and typing emails late at night and being late for everything. So that's basically what they see. But that's again like the tip of the iceberg because like I think we don't know what these tasks are.
We have no idea.
Exactly. And
all the admin, all the politics, like you said, policy.
All of that sounds very exciting when you say it like that, but okay. But you know, I wish also that we would have, so not only, I think we like information, not only for like everything that is outside of academia for PhD students, but we also actually don't show like what is it to be API or professor. And this is something you learn like sometimes the hard way while being the first step, like as assistant professor. And even like between postdoc and assistant professor, which is like directly the next step in the Netherlands, there's like a huge difference. And that's the moment like it's good to learn like the hard way sometimes because you become resilient and everything. But I think that would be also nice to just have just more information, you know, also giving to master students, exactly what you said, like as early as possible to say, okay, guys, if you go for a PhD, great, but that's 4 years or 5 or 3, whatever, 4 years. And then that's only one pit stop, a long one, but that's only one pit stop. And then you still have to work. Let's assume you finish your PhD when you're between 28 and 30. In the Netherlands, retirement is now 67. So you still have like almost 40 years to work somewhere. Like you need to think about that to like also be strategic in the choices that you make during your PhD. And maybe actually a PhD is not the next step that you should do because you also have students who say, oh, I want to do a PhD. And then they have the PhD title, but they don't want the responsibilities that are associated with a PhD title. And they find job that maybe they apply to stuff with lower responsibilities, but then they won't be hired because they have their PhD. So then the company will think like, oh no, that's someone who wants a bit more.
Yeah, you're overqualified.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a catch-22. Yeah.
So I think we just need more information. And the problem, I think, or not the problem, but also one of the challenges that we have is that when you're master student and PhD student, the senior people you see are only, most of the time, only academics, except if you're lucky enough to be in a project that involves also industry, then you see also researcher in the industry. But otherwise, you're just like with professors that have only seen academia. And that may still somewhat be biased, even though maybe that's a bit different now, but somewhat be biased and to think like, oh, that's academia is still like the prestigious thing, you know, and all the rest is not as good as being in academia, but that's totally not true. But yeah, you still have this bias that is present when PhD students are doing their PhD. So that also doesn't help. And I think if we would just give like information, you know, like without any bias, like just give information and say, this is what you have around you at the end of your PhD. Start early as possible and talk to people. I think we would already help quite a lot of people.
Quite a lot of people, exactly. And we'd help the employers too, because, I think, what's your reaction?
No, I wanted to say totally 200% on that, yeah.
Exactly, because then they'll get to know what PhDs are better. They'll also get more candidates early on who maybe are interning or actually doing their PhD projects within or in collaboration with the company. There's a lot of advantages to come from that. but we're not there. So we're still at a point where there's a lot of work to do to change the processes, the culture, and to have universities do that by default. I think there's efforts in different places. Of course, it's not generalized. So this means that it falls onto us. So I'm thinking of the listener. It falls onto the graduate student. It falls onto the young researcher to do that exploratory work for themselves, right? And I'd really love to have your insights on that, your like best practices or great stories that you may have heard of how people navigated that in a very practical and very productive way, let's say. Because one of the things that's sad about all of this is a loss of productivity. Those months where the PhD falls, outside of university because they finished their degree, but is still not working or is just doing kind of a menial work to pay the bills, but is not, is not employed at the level, let's say, where they should after their degree. For society, it's a loss of productivity. It's a loss also of investment in this person. All these years, there's been scholarships, etc. In any case, what are best practices in this world that we are, where it falls upon the candidate, it falls upon the graduate student or the master students or the postdoc to do that exploration? What are easy maybe avenues to follow, or another way to see it is, what are key avenues to follow when you're trying to get this picture of the landscape?
So I think maybe that's going to be a bit disappointing for the audience. So what I also heard and noticed is that, so PhD students, they work hard, right, during their PhD and especially at the end of their PhD. And then sometimes I think they have the feeling that because they have a PhD, well-deserved, the title and the skills and everything, they have the feeling that basically they just need to send a CV or a resume to a company and then that's it, they're going to be hired.
Yeah.
And
PhD, highest degree.
Exactly. And I understand that because, you work like crazy and you belong to the top 1%, 2% of the population. I still don't know the stats, but it doesn't matter. You belong to like the top in terms of education. So I can imagine that it makes sense that you think, oh, I just need to put some stuff on a resume, like say how many papers I published and send that to a company. And that's okay. Like I work hard enough, now it's time a bit to chill. And
now it's going to pay.
It's going to pay. And that's awful to say, but no, it doesn't work like that. And I think that's also like learning a bit the hard way, because I think the way they learn is basically after having a couple of rejections. I think it starts at like 5, 6, 7 letters or no answer or no positive reactions, that they start to think like, whoa, wait, that's not as easy as I thought. So then they panic because they think, oh, I need to put more work. It costs time. And also I have to be efficient and to learn actually how it is to apply to a company, because it is a different skill than the skills that you have learned during your PhD. And so then it, of course, it's a lot of stress, and then it's delaying all the process and everything. So to come back to your question, I think just like do the work. So maybe understand first that it's horrible to think like that, but okay, a PhD is really hard, but looking for a job will also be something that you have to put efforts into and time. That's also why I say to people, start early, because the earlier you start, the better you will dilute like the effort that you need to put into finding the job. But it's like you do have to like put the work and the effort in that, because otherwise it's just luck if you get something without doing anything. But like you will have to put effort in understanding what are your options, understanding what are the roles that you can find in different companies if you want to go for a company, understanding also how to sell yourself to a potential employer, whoever it's going to be. These are skills that you need to learn as a PhD student, because we are not taught this at university. So it means that like realize that you will need to also put extra work into that in addition to all the work that you're already putting into finishing your PhD. So I think that's something that it's good to realize. And to be a bit more practical, I would say I see so two things, like look for information where it is available and go talk to people. And very often these go well together. So we are at an age that, well, both of us, we didn't have that back then when we finished our PhD, which is social media, which is an easy way and also free way to get information. So sometimes information is not of good quality. So of course you have to look also for good quality information. But I mean, I see like so many, so I'm talking about LinkedIn, so many people that are just posting information where they really just don't want to sell something. They just want to give information that is like correct information. And I think I could name like a lot, but like you can really get like already quite some good information and learn things about how do you need to profile yourself to sell yourself to a company, how do you need to write your resume, these kind of things. This is information that is easily available on LinkedIn. So of course, again, you do have to put the effort into looking for this information and then understand, read, and apply that. But I think if I would be a PhD student, and I hear that also from PhD students now, like I would start with LinkedIn because it's like the low-key thing of just reading what is going on and following accounts that bring just free information. And once you're in this step, I think you will start to see who gives good information. And once you have like been there, I think the next step, and I know that many PhD students are afraid of that, is basically to publish your resume or anything on a post in LinkedIn and say, hello, this is me. I'm finishing my PhD, or I will be available on the market for a job starting this date. These are my skills. Like, do this. And this is something like, I think many will think like, that's never going to work, why would that work? Like it's going to be diluted in the forest of posts on LinkedIn. But that's not true, because it works. It worked with me. Like I can tell you a nice story that happened today.
Yeah, sure.
So we had so I know an ex-student that was doing his master and his PhD in our group, and now he's in Spain. He was looking for a job, and he exactly did that. He posted on LinkedIn nice post where I even not remember, I think he uploaded his CV, and then he just described his skills and he described what he was looking for in terms of jobs. So it was really like concise, to the point. He knew a bit what he was looking for. And what is quite funny is that it was in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, but I know the guy because he was one of our students, and I could see on the CV some keywords. And then I thought, oh wait, Spain. Oh, I know someone in Spain, like someone from the network that is there in one of the cities where, they live in the same cities actually, and the field is the same. Well, let me just like put them in contact. So then I just commented on the post, tagging the second person, saying like, maybe I think we should have a coffee. And honestly, what I was expecting was that they would just connect and, then it's like one person reacher, and then maybe that would be like the snowball effect towards a job. But what I didn't know is that the second person actually had an opening for a position. And what happened is that the ex-student started in this group yesterday with a new job, just with one comment on LinkedIn, just because he had dared as well to just put that on LinkedIn saying, I'm looking for a job. And I think many say to me like, yeah, but I'm a bit like ashamed maybe of saying that I'm looking for a job, and they don't really dare, or they are afraid, like scared of putting something on LinkedIn, because of course everyone can read that. But at the same time, once you go past this and you like see how useful it can be to just like meet new people, even though it's not like your future employer, but just like someone, to get richer in your network, that can be like so useful.
Yeah, definitely. No, the potential is there. I've seen also, I've had guests of the show who totally transitioned on LinkedIn from their PhD to a job. It was just through their LinkedIn presence and how they showed their interests and how they presented themselves. Definitely, I've seen it. This is very, it's quite amazing, because it's really like one post, one comment, and then boom. But it shows first that there's a huge part of. Anyway, it's not that it shows, but because I've had this conversation about the hidden job market and how big it is, and some people anyway, it could be as large as 80% of jobs are not posted, and they're not posted because humans like references, humans like being introduced to someone and having someone vet, or how would I say, vouch for the person. And there's nothing, a paper CV cannot compete with you vouching for someone. So yeah, LinkedIn is super for that. One of the things for people who are afraid of stating that they're like open to work is like the thing, right? There's an option on LinkedIn to just reveal that to recruiters. If you don't want to put it open to everyone, you can just put it that little, it changes your photo, it says open to work just to recruiters, and then this means recruiters in your area, in your domain, will you'll appear in their searches, and this way you don't need to shout it to the world. But that's another conversation. The importance of recruiters, I guess it also changes by country. I imagine the culture around having recruiters that are representing employers and who do that work of headhunting in a certain way. But it's, anyway, I don't know if you have experience with that, but here I know it's a factor.
Yeah, I would say I think it really depends on the position and the field. But one thing that popped into my head while you said that, I think it shows also that your LinkedIn presence is also quite important. So that's one of the advices that I would have, that if you're looking for a job and whatever, if you want to put open to work or not, that at least your LinkedIn profile is ready, that it's filled in with a picture from now and not from 10 years ago. Some information in the headline to have like good keywords that you can be found in case of someone is looking for you, and at least to fill all the information on LinkedIn. That doesn't cost a lot of time. That's also, I think, sometimes I find it nice also to just reflect on yourself, like, oh, how do I profile myself? What are my skills that I want to show on LinkedIn? And then you can be like a bit more passive once this is done, if your profile is like ready, and not just like an empty, like that it looks like you're not using that. I think that's a bit of wasting an opportunity that could bring you somewhere. So I think whoever is looking at your profile, I think what is important is that you also just spend some time to work on your profile to make it a nice, like a business card. We don't anyway use business cards anymore, I guess. So at least that you have like a nice profile. And then if you meet someone at some point, you can say, oh, go to my LinkedIn profile. Because the information is like summarized there in an online format. So I think that's something that everyone can start with, that because it's a kind of low-key activity to do. And then at least you have this that is already ready for the next steps.
Sure. And it's part of that exercise of learning to advocate for yourself, which you mentioned before, and which we don't get trained on that during the PhD. PhD is, anyway, in my experience, it's a big exercise in humility, and you use the term selling yourself, or selling your profile, or selling your candidate profile. And selling is often a word that people, especially people who decided to keep studying, don't react well to. But it's true. You need to learn to speak about what you did in a certain way that will resonate with the people in front of you. If you do the academic type discourse, it will just not resonate with them.
No, and you're saying that in the context of like looking for a job, but even for me, it was really hard to stay in academia, and then you have to write grant proposal and you have to sell yourself, and like almost I will say brag about my achievements. And of course I have achievements, I know them because that's why I'm there, but then you have to sell them. And to me, that's like every time that hurts to write these things, but then it's like, no, that's the game, You have to like take a persona if that's what helps, and then you do have to like enter this game of selling yourself, because you are competing. That's the thing. You're always competing. Even though you're excellent in everything, you're going to compete for everything, for a grant, for an academic career, for like a position in industry. You're competing with like hundreds of others, and you need to be the best fit. And for that, you need, it's just like take ownership. You need to make it perfect for everything that you can, like your resume, sending yourself, knowing people, all of that. So yeah, again, that costs work and effort and time.
Exactly. Showing yourself in the best light possible. And I was like you too, or you know, anyway, I would have, because you used a word that's very charged, which is brag. It's very charged. It's very negative. And I think I have a feeling that here in North America, there's I see my kids are growing up here, and there's it's like bragging. It's a word that's in the dictionary, but it's not used that much. You show and tell. You present yourself. You show your accomplishments, and there's a culture difference, I think, between North America and Europe. And I'm generalizing Europe, of course, but you're from Switzerland, I'm from Portugal, and we have, I have the same difficulty that you said. So that's why I'm doing the generalization. But before we go into the question I want to ask you next, I just want to go say one last thing on LinkedIn. If you just created your profile and you're maybe overwhelmed, or you think, oh, I'm just a master's student, or I'm just a graduate student or graduate researcher, what am I doing here? Just go into the search window of LinkedIn and search MSc or search PhD, and you'll see the profiles that'll appear. And then use that as inspiration to, go see if there's someone in your domain actually. So say, like, put PhD analytical chemistry or applied chemistry, like you said, and see who appears and see where they are. And let that inspire you, not only to kind of solve any imposter feelings that you may have of being on the platform, but also, how do they present themselves? How do they talk about their publishing or their accomplishments or whatever? And let that inspire you on what then you do on your profile, and let that give you kind of permission to be there. Anyway, it's just a last LinkedIn thing I wanted to say, because it's a powerful platform for that.
Great tip. And I think some people will be like afraid that they have checked a profile and that the person behind the profile will see that. And then I'm like, no, don't be afraid, because actually people like that. They like when their profile or watch, because they're like, ooh, I feel like I'm a kind of influencer, So it's just like, it's like the aim of LinkedIn. It is to be used in a professional way to basically reach your dream goal or whatever, achieve your professional goals. So just go for that. And also, exactly what you said, and also look for, if for instance you're a master's student or PhD student, look for your colleagues, like the students that are in the same class. Some of them are already a bit more advanced, and they maybe like LinkedIn already, so they have filled in their profile and maybe they started posting. Like, just get inspired, like don't copy, but get inspired and see what they are doing, and then maybe take for you what feels like it's what works for you. So yeah,
exactly. And then the next step for people you don't know is to actually ask them to talk with them, because same thing, they'll be flattered.
correct.
Yeah. Now, so one thing you've been you've been mentioning is it takes time and work. And I've been talking with people, like I had a guest not so long ago, Claudia Belliveau, and it's been 1 year since her defense, and she's had rejections and like almost being hired for a position she wanted, but she'd need to move cities and and 1 year seems a lot. But from other conversations I've had, it appears that the market now is not easy for hiring for different reasons. Economical, political, science funding is not super at its best from the last 10, 15 years, or at least it doesn't feel like it's increasing. Maybe it's in some countries, like the States, for example, it's being cut down. Now, 1 year, people who now are like maybe finishing the PhD and hear me say 1 year now for the third time or fourth time, this may scare them. Do you have, and you have experience with your students at university, you have next minds, what is based on what you said, which is you need to invest time and effort, what is, let's say, a game plan for this 1 year of wait? Let's say, do you have do you have kind of a blueprint to share of where to invest time, maybe even money? So I know Claudia actually hired a coach that's helping people get hired in a specific domain that she wanted. Because I think 1 year seems like a lot. Again, often 1 year has to do with the fact that people didn't do any networking or other work before, so they finish their PhD and then they start looking. So there's all that learning curve that you mentioned. But what's, for someone who is now finishing, what would you say is the domains or the skills or the training that they should focus in that investment of time, of effort, and maybe even some financial investment to accelerate that first hire, which cannot be guaranteed, but
No. Yeah, I think so I would say that talking to people, for me, that's like the place where you will get the most return. So try to talk to as many people as possible. So for instance, I'm thinking, let's assume you are limited in terms of money because we were stuck with this situation. So at least you have money to live.
Because you're a PhD researcher.
Exactly. Like you end up with, or after the postdoc, like you have no money. So that's a bit a problem. But then, so you have many events, networking events that are free. So of course you have to, again, look for them in your city or in your country to find them. But for instance, so in the Netherlands, we have what they call bioscience parks, where you have a lot of companies that are in the same region, let's say same area, and you have sometimes even a university medical center, and if you're lucky, even the university itself. So then it's like a big pool of potential options for a PhD student who is graduating. And they do have, so you can see that on the website, they do have like regular events at least once per month where there is something happening. So for instance, one is like having a startup, so entrepreneurs that come to just pitch their startup. So even if you're not interested in startup world, just go, because you will meet someone, and if you feel like, so I'm super introvert, so sometimes going on my own to this type of events, I'm just like, it doesn't really excite me. But then grab someone with you, like a friend or another PhD student or someone, just to like be there. And even if it doesn't lead to anything, at least it's free. You feel like you have done something. I think the feeling already of doing something and just taking ownership of your future, I think it already makes you feel good. And then very likely you will talk to someone. At some point you will talk to someone, and then even if it doesn't lead to something right now, like they have a position for you, maybe it's going to lead to something like 3 months later, or maybe they know someone, and then you will contact someone else and something like that. So I would say if you can sort of, how do you say that, capitalize in the human interactions that you can have. So try to really talk to as many people as possible. And that can be also online, to just contact people via LinkedIn or send them an email, people from that you maybe consider your mentors, or that you think, okay, this person may be useful. So there's a high chance they won't reply because they may be busy, but then those who reply, they will be helpful. In some way, they will be helpful. They will give you something that you can use for the future. So I would say try to put as much time and effort into human interaction, because I think that's the one that helps you get closer to more knowledge and a position. I think as a second option, I would say something I didn't have, and I think that's one of my regrets in some ways, is to have a plan B or some plans, and not only have one thing that you're like, oh, I'm just going to go for this position because my dream is to work for this big pharma company. And then exactly what you say, for instance, what happens, there's a big freeze in the hiring and they don't hire anyone. Then you're a bit like, oh, okay, I need to find another direction. And for me, that was, for instance, a grant that I didn't get to go for a postdoc. And I don't know why I was convinced that I would get it. And I just missed it for like one step, one thing, one person. So then you're like, oh, cool, I don't have a plan B. And you just think like, why didn't I have a plan B or whatever thing? So always think like, it's good to have your dream job. I think that's already great if you find your dream job, but like try to still stay aware of the fact that maybe it doesn't work for reasons that are not in your control, that can be just money or whatever reasons that are you don't have any impact on the control on them. So look for something else, and also remember that you're gonna work in your life, if things go well, roughly 40 years. So your first job doesn't need to be your dream job. Maybe it's just a step towards the next step. So if you find something that is maybe not perfect yet, like, just go for it. And then if you don't like it after 1 year, then you have some more experience, and then you can use that to move to the next step that would be maybe more
Exactly.
Fitting. And what you said about the coach, I think that's also if you do have the money, but I think that's usually quite expensive. Well, I know it myself, right? But it is definitely money. If you really need to find someone that you know they will be helpful. So someone that is qualified, but also someone that fits your wishes, personality, and where you think like, okay, there's a match. But that can be really, really helpful to find who you are as a person and also as an employee, and what do you want to do in the future. That you do have a lot of persons that are available for help, but then indeed it comes with a lot of costs.
Yeah, no, that's it. It comes with cost, but it's if it's like you said, if it really fits your objective. Let's say so this person, she wanted to be it's not exactly, but let's say medical science liaison, and this coach was specialized in that. So she came from pharma and she was coaching people, especially being hired on that. So she decided, and she had the possibility of spending that amount, that money. But if it's specific and if it's really going to help you reach your exact goal, and you can go for it, because it's like you said, it's something we really don't know how to do when we come out of the PhD. So we do it wrong a few times, and then we get all these rejections or these ghostings where there's not even a rejection. It's just crickets. You don't hear anything, and you don't understand why. The important thing is, don't keep, if it's not working, don't keep doing the same thing. And one way to change what you do is to get some mentorship or coaching from someone who can tell you, okay, here's what you're doing wrong, change it, a little bit, change it like this, change it like that, depending on your domain. But I really like that your first go-to idea was talking with people, because I do think that's the cheapest, sometimes zero cost, but most powerful thing that you can do, because like you said, even just one comment on LinkedIn can get you hired. And that's just human communication. It's not coaching. It's not, investing in pro photos of yourself or your profile. It's just talking with people.
Yeah. And it can be like, so it's basically looking for help, I would say. And then in this case, it's like cheap help in terms of not expensive. And again, like you work with a lot of people at universities, like your supervisor, if you have a good contact with them, or whoever, colleagues or alumni or something like that, you always know people. So just contact them. And again, like many will not reply because everyone is super busy and everything, but then that's okay, because it means that they are not there to help you, but you will have some that will make one step to help you in some ways. And it can be maybe like, oh, I don't have time, but go talk to this other person. But then you're already one step further because you got a new person in your network. So like, don't shy away, because I also hear that, I think that's maybe a good tip as well. So I receive a lot of messages everywhere, like LinkedIn, Next Month, The View, from previous students, current students, other people that I don't know, people that at some point I met at a conference, and they ask me for some kind of advice or maybe guidance or help or something. So the So every time that I can do that, I try to help. So not always, because I have limited time as well. But then very often they start their email. So I always have to laugh with, oh, I know you are super busy. And I know that I'm not sure you can help me. But then I'm like, of course I'm super busy. But you do have people who actually like to help others. And I have colleagues who also always are present to help, even though they are super busy. So don't assume, don't think, oh, I'm not going to send an email to my professor, mentor, whatever, because they are super busy. Yeah, of course they are. But you're also an important person, and maybe they would like to also help you, because that brings some happiness in their job as well. So don't don't be too scared of or ashamed again of writing. Just do it. And then if you're ghosted, okay, no,
Don't take it personally.
Exactly. And then go ask someone else. Maybe send a couple of reminders and then go ask someone else, because at some point someone will help you, and hopefully more than one person will help you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is true. And the one thing you said that's also interesting is that kind of the billiard ball effect that you can create. If at the end of each conversation you ask the person, do you recommend me to talk with someone else? There's someone that comes up to mind. That will help you even exponentially grow your network, your networking effort, because then you'll have an actual contextual suggestion that's going to be very probably interesting to you, and that allows you to already put on your agenda the next conversation.
Yeah. And if it's not now, again, that's one thing that I find brilliant, is maybe it's not helpful now, it's someone that you park somewhere in your mind, but then this person will come maybe 10 years later. I have people now that I'm thinking that I met 10 years ago, and now we start maybe working together because that's the moment, and 10 years ago was too early. So if everything that happens at some point, I'm really convinced that will lead to something, but maybe not now, but then keep them, somewhere in your mind. And then at some point, you end up having a podcast recording with someone you met on LinkedIn many months later, these kind of things. So at some point it works, it brings something, but you maybe don't know what it is. So yes, start early so that you don't have to wait too long before things start to become something tangible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're getting to the end of the interview, and I have two questions, and then just let me gather my thoughts here. So the first question is, in your experience, and I know you're more your network and the people you work with are more in the life sciences, but are you seeing this kind of 6 month, 9 month, 1 year period of waiting until you get that first solid job after your PhD?
So that's funny, because I think it was last year that I did a small survey on LinkedIn, filled by 75%. So, in terms of stats, we're going to do with what we have. And it was all field. So that was really everyone who had a PhD. And then I asked, how long did it take after your PhD to find a job? And that's so funny, because not funny, but interesting to see. It's really diverse. So you have those that indeed had 1 year to wait, but that was not the majority. I think the majority, for what I remember, was between 3 to 6 months. And we had roughly 1 quarter that was between 0 and 3 months. So it is, I think, really dependent on many factors. But for the audience that is now listening to that, don't be afraid of hearing this 1 year that you mentioned many times, because it can be that after 1 month you already have something, and it can be that maybe you need to work a bit harder to get something. So I don't know if that's field related or not. I think it's more opportunity and a bit of luck, but I would say I saw a lot that found a job quite quickly, which also surprised me positively. So I think that's something good to keep in mind.
Yeah, so if you think of the bell curve, I imagine on one side there's luck, and then on the other side there's unluck, and then in the middle maybe is the 6 months, 6 to 9 months. But would you agree with the statement that probably people who are in the shorter months, and again, this is totally, maybe I'll ask the question another way because you don't have the data. I'm going to ask it another way. I remember coming out the thing, the thing I focused on was my CV. I need to fix it and tailor it, and it's important to do. I never thought about networking. If you had to, let's say, invest, if you're, let's say, you have limited time to invest on either CV tailoring and cover letter tailoring or networking, what would you say the priority should be? And I know it's not a really realistic question, but
No, I think, but it's funny because you're saying I don't have the data, but in this survey, I actually asked people also, what is the role that networking played in finding a job? See, and there was a lot indeed, the ones who found a job. So there was kind of correlation in the ones who found the job a bit earlier. They said that they had something related to networking that helped them. But they also, again, not to scare anyone, but so networking is important. But then other people also said that networking did not play any role in them getting a job. So that is also possible to get a job. But I would say, to answer your question, yeah, networking definitely. And you know why as well? Because if you start talking, let's assume you want to go to industry and you start talking with people from the industry, they will also tell you how you need to write your resume. And that's going to be way more efficient than trying to figure that out yourself, even though now you have information available and everything. But I think to have a time efficient process, that's what we also would like to have, is go talk to people and then say what is needed for the audience that I will have when I apply to a job in your company. What do I need to show? And even better, ask them, would you be open to help me or share your CV with me if they have been recently hired, because maybe
it's amazing. Yeah.
Like people, for me, it's really people go to people because they will help you in some ways. Again, some will say no, but then maybe you have one lucky person who says oh, but let me tell you, for the CV, this is what you need to do because that's what they're going to look for, or in the interview or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's such a great one. And yeah, I'll keep that in mind because it's really, really good. And it's true. And I think I still have one last kind of fun question. But what's difficult for us is, especially coming out of the PhD, we got used to, I solve everything on my own, and I can workshop this. So I can workshop the CV. I can spend time on the computer, see what Harvard CV, whatever, and I'll do my own. And then you fail, and then it doesn't work for you. Of course, with infinite time, you can reach anything, but you don't have infinite time. So, like you said, and you said it exactly the right way. If you want to do it in an efficient way, the best, fastest path is to talk with someone who can actually show you how it's done, and then you cut the parts of your CV who are useless. You flesh out those that are useful. You kind of learn the language you need to use, and then you'll probably start having calls or responses faster. Yeah. So my last fun question: from introvert to introvert. But and it's just, you'll see, it's nothing super, but I think it's fun for me because you mentioned that you pick someone up and you get a friend to go to a networking event, but then I remember, and today it will be completely different, and I've my introversion extroversion balance, I think, has changed with the years, and with the podcast, for sure the podcast has had an effect on that. But I remember being at this event and just not knowing what to say to people. And I did what you said. I went with a friend. I went with Sati, with a friend, and I was extremely introverted and self-conscious. So what I have a trick that I usually share, but I'd like to have your take on how you do it. How do you strike conversation with someone that's at one of these events that you don't know, and that and that has a tag with their name, but it's not someone that you know at all?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think if I would really be alone, so without any extrovert friend that I would use to introduce me to everyone, exactly. So what I usually do is I like to listen to people, and I'm interested in them as humans more than as, let's say, scientists or whatever they have done in terms of work. So what I usually try to do is to approach them if I want to approach one person. So I wait until the person is alone. So I don't like these big groups and everything, because that my God, this is not the best. So the person is alone, is not stressed. So usually if the person is somewhere close to a drink or getting a good drink, it's a good moment. And then I will go to them and not give them a compliment, but mention something that I see on them, or that I think about them, or that I heard from a talk they gave or something like that, and just say like, oh, I really liked when you said this. And then, by the way, and then I'm introducing myself and I shake their hands. And then usually it's a good opening for a conversation. So to pick something that from them that I liked, and then it shows that I have some kind of human, or that I like to have like human connection. And then usually that's the way that it starts. But now I'm
That's very
really curious about yours, huh?
well. That's very, very good, and it's interesting because you really focus on the approaching the person, and I wasn't thinking so much about that, but it's a great point. Especially I like how you are kind of sensitive or observant of their body language, and are they relaxed, are they with the drink. That's really a great point. Then if you have kind of a bridge, like you said, to mention something that starts a conversation, it's easier. For me, the change between how I thought things were done and how I would do today is, I thought, okay, I need to have this kind of elevator pitch ready to kind of say, hi, I'm David, I do da, and that's very uncomfortable to me. And I, as an introvert, or yeah, and I think it's one of the things, and you mentioned it too. One of the things that for people who see themselves as introverted, or anyway, consider themselves to be a little bit shy, is a bit like we were saying on LinkedIn. People are often flattered if you ask them questions. So you can just, like you said, say, this is me, I'm PhD, I just got my PhD, I'm here, I'm here at the event to understand whatever the event is covering. But I'd really like to hear about, once you've had that bridge element that you said, that comment that starts the conversation, switch to listening, to asking questions that lets the people start telling a story. And then that'll get you into the oh, I'm in a conversation, I know I'm listening, but you're in it. It's no longer a foreign or frightening thing. I'm actually good at listening, so now I can pick up on whatever the person says, ask a next question, and then eventually the person will ask a question back, and then you don't need to be in full control of how a conversation would go. So that's my thing, is using the asking questions and being in listening mode. Quick.
I think the listening mode is something that people that are a bit more introvert are good at. So basically just stand there and listen. You are like, already by just listening, you are someone who is valuable because you listen to what is said. And I think in a scientific world where we like to brag, to actually have someone listening, just really like being authentic and just listening, I think that's something that is very valued. So
yeah. So that's it. And I think it's important. A lot of us, even if there's more people who are more introverted, often just coming from the academic, coming from the PhD and being in a kind of industry where everyone is like suit and tie, it kind of makes you a little bit introverted, or feeling like an odd, the odd person out, the kind of having imposter feelings. So I think this trick should work for everyone.
Yeah, that's
start by getting people talking.
And it's the way you learn. If you feel uncomfortable, then it's okay. It's just okay. It's part of the process, of just learning. So you just acknowledge like, okay, I don't feel good, but just be there and continue. And then afterwards, the day after, maybe you just reflect on that and you're like, oh, maybe I could have done that differently. And then next time you do things differently. So no, it's not that because you feel uncomfortable that it's bad. It's just also part of your self-growth happening. And it's actually quite good. Then you learn from that. And then next time would be better and better and better.
Will be better, exactly.
Always.
Exactly. Excellent. Isabelle, the time is up. But before I thank you, I think people listening would be very interested to know how to reach out to you. You have your project Next Minds, which I think it'd be great to let them know more about it. So in the next few minutes, could you talk about what Next Mind is, how people can reach out to you, and the website too. Of course, all these links will be in the show notes. But it'd be great for you to share that project, what it is, how people can go explore it, and then also how people can thank you for what you shared today or ask you questions to dig deeper into something, to anything we talked.
They can send me chocolate if they want to thank me.
Aha.
No, so I have my own company called Next Minds, so where I basically focus on helping early career scientists, so mostly PhD students and a postdoc. I do that by giving workshops. For now, it is only in the Netherlands, but I'm also giving webinars. So if someone is interested from an institution, a university, that you can ask the university to contact me, and then we can organize a webinar on different topics, such as, for instance, what we just discussed today, so how to prepare the next steps. So I try to do tailored workshops as well, like of the duration that is needed. So you can find me on the website nextminds.net. There is also some information. There's my email address, so you can send me an email. There is a contact form that you can use to contact me if you want. I also do coaching sessions also via so online format. So this is also something where I can help you like really one-on-one if that's needed. And I'm quite active on LinkedIn, as you now may know, because I love writing. So I also like to share free information on LinkedIn. So you can find me also there. And last but not least, I send every second week a newsletter to the community of Next Minds that is also free, where you can learn of everything that is related to being a PhD student and topics such as career, mental health, finances, all of that. And you can also subscribe to it on the website. So nextminds.net.
Amazing. Excellent. So I will share all of that on the show notes of the episode. Isabelle, this has been a great conversation. I think the thing that I find super inspiring from all you've shared is that mostly what you've presented as being super important for people to focus to is nothing technical, is nothing it's not further training that you need to get or maybe invest to get. The thing that you put at the center of this discussion of how to get ready for your post-PhD career was the human factor. And this is something that aligns tremendously with what I believe and what I try to share with people. And I think it makes it lowers the bar of difficulty that people may imagine because there's people out there saying, oh, you need to work with me to prepare your CV for automatic CV evaluation systems. There's a lot of people out there selling different things, different bells and whistles, like stating that they will help people get hired. And I do think that it's important, this message that yes, having a tailored CV, having a CV that's easily, readable, that's understandable, that's that has some storytelling to it, etc., is important. But if you know the right people, all of that is, it takes second place. So meet people, talk to people. Even if you're an introvert, be in situations where you can listen in, talk to people, present yourself, and learn. Because all of these moments, even though especially if you're in the middle of your PhD, this is just to grow your network. You're not looking for a job right away, but there's words you're going to be hearing again and again. There's so this terminology that you don't have, you're starting to have it. You'll probably learn about tendencies in the market. You'll probably learn about new jobs that are emerging that you won't find on job postings, because only the people who are in the companies know that they're happening. Plus, these people will start to know you, and eventually, when there's a position, and they see someone like Isabelle, someone like me saying, "Hey, Cindy, just saying that, just commenting to tell you that I don't know, Francis is a great person, and that she has really great skills in this domain, and that like you did, and that ends up getting their job. Where's the CV tailoring, etc., and there nowhere. It was a human thing, and that inspires me, and that I hope that inspires you who are listening to, if anything at all, to start adding in your weekly, or monthly agenda some sort of in-person, or at least LinkedIn networking and conversations with people. So I'm really, really appreciative of that, and I really had a great time hearing all you had to share about that.
Thanks. And I think, remember that you're going to be hired by a human, not only by a computer, maybe a bit, but like mostly by a human. So be a human yourself. It's still about human interactions. And on LinkedIn, or just like face to face, or via email, that goes back to just like being human. So
yeah, exactly. So, Isabelle, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being with you on the microphone for Papa PhD. I wish you all the best for your projects. I hope you keep helping the most people possible through nextminds.net. I hope more and more universities see the interest and see the value that these types of workshops and coaching brings to people, and that they put it in their priorities to offer these services early to all their graduate students. So thank you.
Thanks a lot.